my parents owned restaurants growing up, but my mother was a big music fan, and I guess I was listening to the grunge era, Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and I don't think she was particularly a huge fan. So she would slide CDs under my bedroom door, like Van Morrison and just stuff she liked, and Beatles records and things like that. So when I got Magical Mystery Tour, Strawberry Fields Forever, I was like, this is so catchy, and it's such a pop song, but it's so cool too. So to be able to write something like that became like a lifelong goal that I still haven't achieved. Well, I started out on piano. When I was 5, I started piano lessons, and I was sort of the kid that you didn't have to tell to practice. Actually, the piano was in the same room as the TV, so when the news came on, I had to quiet down for a bit. And then I think somewhere around 12 or 13, you realize that girls really like the guitar and guys that play the guitar. So as shallow as that sounds, I was 13, so it's okay. I picked up a guitar, and it was actually quite easy to learn, having especially a classical sort of piano background. So I took like a few months of lessons and then just taught myself. And it worked out quite good because the guitar was when I started singing as well. It's easier to write songs on guitar. Well, it was then. Now I actually have gone back and I write songs on piano. But and the guitar is much more portable. You can bring it around the world with you. Upright pianos are quite heavy. I'm not going to tell you about the first song I ever wrote. The first songs that I wrote were just instrumental piano pieces. I was writing music even right from like 5 or 6 years old when I was taking piano lessons. Whatever skill level I was at, which was probably crap, I was composing things on my own, in between practicing Beethoven. So those were the first kind of things I wrote, and then I think my parents were quite impressed that I could write music at such a young age. But as far as like songs with lyrics and some sort of concept beyond that, it started with the guitar, somewhere in my early teens. In the first, probably batch of songs I wrote, like I said, I won't tell you about them. I'll spare you the details. They were terrible. And then they started to get a bit better. And so She Says actually was one of the first ones that I wrote. I wrote that song when I was 15. And, years later, I still play it at concerts and people know the words. So I'm kind of amazed when I look back that I wrote that when I was 15, but that was one of the first ones that I'm going to tell you about. I go like really long stretches without writing. And I feel like that's this sort of the absorbing your life period. And you might have a few ideas for songs, and you might jot them down in a book. And then at some point, you sit down and you can start organizing all of those thoughts and ideas. And it comes sometimes quite quickly. If I get stuck writing a song, people ask me this all the time, like, how do you finish a song, You take a break, because I think 90% of the song is written subconsciously, like while you sleep. And you wake up in the morning and it's there. Songwriting is sort of a somewhat sort of magical thing that I think comes from some really deep recesses of your brain somewhere. So yeah, I don't spend a ton of time writing, but when I do, it usually comes quite quickly. And for some reason, in threes. Songs come in threes. I don't know why. I'm also a sucker for the sad music. When you're actually sad, you don't really feel like writing music. When you're sad, you feel like listening to sad music other people wrote. But yeah, I don't even know if it's so much a sad thing, but I like a sort of dark. If you can get a little bit of that dark, moody is a word I like. Something that you put on at nighttime, and just kind of chill out too. The happy songs, they usually come in like the summertime when everybody's a bit happier anyway. And they're fantastic for albums and for shows because it breaks up all of the other sort of dark, ballady, slower tempoed stuff. Because when you're at a live show, there's a lot of energy, a lot more than when you're listening to a record at home. So I think, both categories of songs have their place. The best piece of advice I got, or one of them anyway, was from Tori Amos. I did a quite a long tour with Tori Amos. We did like a year on the road. I was supporting her, which is fantastic. 45-minute set every night, great. Short work day. And we were talking about press, and we were talking about, reading your own press, that kind of thing. And she told me, don't read your own press. Weigh your press. How much do you have? That's what's important. Like if people are talking about you, that's what's important. It's not so much what they say. And that's come in quite handy over the years. And it keeps you from taking yourself too seriously as well. Because in the end, it's just music. It's not like, surgery. No one lives or dies depending on like how good my music is. So, and of course there's going to be people that are going to hate it, and there's going to be people that will love it. And reading neither is probably healthy. Now, the worst piece of advice, it's not so much advice, but taking too much advice, I think, is actually really bad. Because you start to lose track of what you kind of want to do as an artist when there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Yeah, that's a pretty big one. Because if you start to take too many, if there's too many opinions flying around, it becomes impossible to compromise it in the first place. You don't want to compromise it really, and then you can never really be happy with the end product. So the less advice I take artistically, the better, because I'm more apt to be sort of go with gut decisions, which are always good, and end up with something I'm happy with. Well, it's to some degree it's just the way things turned out. I started out indie, and I was indie for a long time, doing sort of everything by my own terms, and it's quite good because you can kind of decide how much you want to work, and you can decide kind of where you want to tour and what you want your record to sound like. And of course, working with a huge company, it affords you, well, if you do well, which I was pretty lucky to get a single that sort of reached everyone in the world to some degree. It opens a lot of doors. So at the same time, there was a lot more demand, there's a lot more pressure. I actually sort of ended up singing so much that I had to go in and get the vocal cord surgery at one point, sort of like Adele. So it's grueling, but that's stuff for, people in their 20s. I think to start out, to work really hard, and my record was 297 shows I did in a year. So I think for new bands, the advice I always give is just do everything you can, because it's all, even if the gig is terrible, you got some experience out of it, and you got that 2 hours of practice playing in front of people, and sometimes playing in front of a terrible audience is actually a good skill to have. So as far as which one's better, I tend to like being indie because I kind of I'm sort of a perfectionist, and I like to be in control of my business and my music. I love performing in front of people. That's my favorite thing. I love being in the studio as well. It's really fun, really creative. It can be very frustrating. If it's not really frustrating, then you're probably in trouble. Yeah, I guess at this point in my career, because for so long the goal is like, I want to have a hit. I want people to know who I am. And, having sort of done that and worked for that, now I think my focus is longevity and being able to stick around for a while. And so, I think pacing myself is important, and I think staying true to myself and my music, so that when I go out on stage, I don't feel like I'm compromising and I'm doing what I want to do. As long as people keep buying tickets to the shows and buying the albums, I'll do it as long as I can. Most of the songs are written, and we're performing about half of them live. So it's coming soon. We're looking at January or February of 2015. And you'll probably start to see quite a bit of little hints and pieces and some content kind of pretty soon that'll go along with that. But I'm pretty excited about it because it's my first independent record in 14 years or something. So 13 years, 14 years. So yeah, quite excited. Hey, I'm Howie Day, and you're logged on to Pinoytuner.